that, because he was the success story of day one for Elf Mark VDS. Aaron Canet, his teammate, is in qualifying one once again. Canet found himself down in 23rd place yesterday and 1.1 seconds off the pace, which, trust me, around the Sachsenring in Moto 2 is a lifetime for Canet. That is the 8th time now in 11 rounds that he's been in qualifying one. For Unchu, though, it's a 5th Q2 appearance for him coming up a little bit later on. Certainly hope that he's not diminished those chances of taking part in that Q2 session. Certainly in a slow speed crash, as Zell mentioned, maybe just a bit of burn or perhaps a bump on his arm, nothing more serious than that. Ivan Artola has put in a 1:21.807 immediately at the start of this free practice 2 session. That is the first ever 1:21 lap of the Sachsenring on a Moto 2 bike. Of course, the lap times are always much closer between the classes at the moment, given the shorter lap, but a 1:21.8, you don't have to go too far back into the page of history to say that that would have been a very good MotoGP lap time. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great lap from Ortola. Was really happy with how his progress went yesterday up inside that top 2, and Ortola was sounding very confident. He said he's in that flow state on that motorcycle, of course, picking up that debut win in Moto 2 over in Brno, backed it up with a really solid P5, as mentioned, over in Assen after a disappointing Saturday. And he just said he's riding the crest of the wave, feels super comfortable on that Kalex machine. And yeah, Ortola looking really strong here again this morning already, was very confident. He said just needs to find a little bit on the engine brake, which he thinks can help him in FP2, and then of course going into qualifying a little bit later on this afternoon. But this is really good news for Ortola. Of course, a little bit of a slower lap last time around, but 1:21.8 is absolutely phenomenal. The fastest lap, to remind you, from yesterday was a 1:22.260 from Guevara. Ortola is also in the 1:22.2s, a 1:22.296. So yeah, around about 0.4 of a second, pretty much half a second quicker than he went yesterday in time attack mode. This morning, conditions obviously better, a lot more grip on the circuit as well, no overnight rain to worry about as well, but yeah, really promising signs for Ortola in this, of course, had a qualifying on the race. And his long run was very impressive, looking at how many laps they did in the 1:23s, which looks like the sort of race pace that we were seeing yesterday. The sort of consistent moment pace was in the sort of mid-ish 1:23s. Ivan Artola did a run of 11 consecutive 1:23s. He did 12 in total. He did a 23.2 on his very last lap of the session. That was in addition to 6 laps in the 1:22s yesterday for Ivan Artola. Compare that to David Alonso, who wasn't as happy with his race pace, as Unchu has now returned to the racetrack post-crash. That's why you can see the gravel still on his Pirelli tyres. 8 laps in the 1:23s for David Alonso. He also did 7 laps in the 24s. So Alonso's race pace didn't look quite as special. Senna Regis, he did 10 laps in the 1:23s yesterday. Manu Gonzalez, well, he put in 9, as Xabi Zurutusa has now gone down. He's also down at turn 3, and his bike down for the second time. This time the Marshalls, who have unfortunately dropped their motorcycle. Shame that for Zurutusa, who had a quietly impressive first day yesterday and was currently up in 13th place in that session. But yeah, that 1:21.8 is a headline lap time for Ivan Artola, a new all-time lap record around this circuit. But he is much more than just a one-lap merchant around here. He has very good, consistent race pace. And it's weird to say that the unknown might be Ethan Guevara, given that he was fastest yesterday and sounded super confident when he was speaking to our colleague Kiko Giles after practice yesterday. But once again, Guevara didn't really put all that many laps in yesterday in that practice session, which I guess you could see as a sign of confidence, but he's now got to back up that confidence with his results and his performance today and tomorrow. We've seen that a lot this season, haven't we? Guevara sticking in a time early in the session and then chilling out for the rest of the practice. But obviously, put it politely, obviously not chilling out, of course. Guevara obviously very confident, but only set 14 laps yesterday. Even Ortola set 24, Alonso set 22, Aegis set 22, Gonzalez set 23. 14 is the least of anyone until you get down to Alberto Ferrandis, his teammate. So clearly there's tactics going on there in the Blue Crew Yamaha Pramac box to, you know, don't go out if you don't feel it's necessary. Now, it obviously worked for Guevara yesterday. Intrigued to see how it goes this morning. Guevara currently up inside that top 10 in P6. Ferrandis, of course, in P10 there as well. But yeah, Guevara just said he was feeling so comfortable, very strong, he said, in sector 4, which is basically the braking zone into turn 12, the Saxon curve as you come out of the Ralph Waldman curve down the waterfall, and then of course turn 13 before you fire it up to the finish line. So a couple of corners, a couple of braking zones and a couple of acceleration zones, which is where Ethan Guevara said he was strongest yesterday. So keep an eye on that a little bit later on in qualifying. If Guevara clicks through the third split with a red sector, it's more than likely he's going to set the fastest lap of the session, and watch out for that again in this session as well. But yeah, Guevara, it's been an intriguing one so far this season on a Friday, but clearly it's working for him.
Yeah, he just seems to do the reverse to everyone else in a session, just decides to put a lap in at the beginning and then, I wouldn't say chill for the rest of the session, but just do his own work with the pressure almost off his shoulders already, because he knows he's in qualifying too. Doesn't have to worry about that at the end of the session. We're into this final sector now, where Guevara has been so strong. We're on board with the one man ahead of him in the World Championship. That is Manu Gonzalez, who's in third at the moment in this session. But that lap's from Ortola. He's a mile ahead of the field in this FP2 session at the moment. He's 7/10 clear of the Liqui Moly Dynabolt intact pair of Agius and Gonzalez, who both put in 22.5s. That matches what they did yesterday. Gonzalez has gone 2,000ths quicker than he went yesterday on a 22.565. Senna Agius, by contrast, he's gone 500ths quicker than he went yesterday. Denis Öncü is back in the pit lane. Of course, trucks and the Moto2 paddock, if you like, is unfortunately the side of the main street that we're sat in. The paddock 2, as it's called here at the Sachsenring. So fortunately for Denis, if he's going to go change his leathers, he's going to have to find a MotoGP truck somewhere for some privacy.
Yeah, he is. Just caught the tail end of that crash. Looks like a classic front ender down at the Amiga curve at turn 3. Good to see Öncü is all okay. Was a little bit worried, as you can see there, when he was standing up holding his right elbow. As mentioned, it's been a promising weekend so far for Öncü. Obviously, we only had one day at it, but straight into the top 14, which was a really good stuff from the Turk yesterday. The second fastest Boscuro after Ivan Guevara, of course, topped the times, but crucial time lost in this session. And as mentioned, the tyre wear is absolutely critical around this Sachsenring circuit, and this was a session a lot of the Moto2 riders were saying yesterday, as it always is, but especially so when tyre wear is at a premium. The tyre life is at a premium, I should say, as Tony Arbolino just gets a bit frustrated down there at turn 1. The latter stages of this session, when you're going into sort of laps, well, we're clocking into lap 8 now, so get to sort of 12, 13 and even a little bit more than that, and you're going to start to work out how fast the tyre drops and how much pace you've got. So important for Öncü to try and get back out. I'm sure he will do for the remainder of the session, for maybe 15 or 10 minutes of it. But yeah, crucial time lost unfortunately for Öncü.
Just dwelling for one more moment on the Ortola lap, this 1:21.807. I give one of our colleagues a shout out quite a lot, because he's so good at stats. He's so good at history. It's our colleague Luke Godfrey back in base in Barcelona, part of our social media squad, who points out to me that Ivan Ortola's lap of a 1:21.807 would have put him on pole for the MotoGP race back in 2010, the very first year of the Moto2 World Championship. Pole in Moto2 that year was some 3 seconds slower than they're currently going in Moto2. Of course, so much progress in terms of, obviously there's been a recent change in terms of the tyre supplier in Moto2. Dunlop, of course, such proud and successful suppliers for so long in this Moto2 class. Of course, now it is Pirelli who have moved the game on to some tune in recent years. The lap records have been smashed just about everywhere we've gone in the Moto2 World Championship over the last year or two. And even Ortola doing it again with a 1:21.807. Maybe he will be setting MotoGP pole positions in the future, but a lap like that, a 1:21.8, that would have been not too far in the past. 16 years ago, that would have put him on pole position in MotoGP. Extraordinary rate of progress.
8/10 slower than Alex Rins went yesterday as well on board the factory Yamaha. Incredible from Ivan Ortola, and it's one of the reasons why he's a wanted man in 2027 and by numerous teams that we are expecting. Of course, well, there's definitely a spare seat going at the Aspar garage. We know Ortola rode for the Aspar squads in his Moto Junior days. Of course, Danny Holgado has been confirmed to be moving up to MotoGP with Gresini Racing. Very exciting stuff for Holgado, and fully expecting Alonso to be confirmed as a Honda rider in the near future as well. Quiles will get a promotion. If he doesn't, I'll eat my shoe. And everyone is expecting Keyless to obviously make some great progress into Moto2, but we know that maybe Ortola is potentially one of the riders to be moving into Aspar, moving into any of the top teams. If rumours are to be believed, Ortola is the wanted man in Moto2 next season. Of course, MSI we wanted to keep in, and MSI are title winners in Moto2, of course. Don't forget, with Igor a couple of seasons ago. So he's not in a bad squad by any means, and MSI will be desperate to try and keep hold of him. Really intrigued to see what happens with the sort of Moto2 dominoes. We're waiting to see, of course, how it plays out between Aegis and Gonzalez. Which one of them will be moving up? Maybe both of them, maybe just one of them, into the MotoGP fold next year as well. But Ortola demonstrating exactly why he is a wanted man in Moto2 in 2027. And then, of course, if he can have a good rest of the season, which we're fully expecting him to, then he'll land in 2027 wherever he does land. If he stays in MSI or moves on to another team as well, he'll be one of the title favourites going into next year, that's for sure.
Just looking at the lap times he's setting at the moment, he's still setting pretty competitive lap times up against the other riders that you would expect to be his competition through the rest of the weekend. His last lap was a 1:23.3, Ivan Ortola, so already his lap times have dropped off by a second and a half from the start of the session, but we've got Aegis doing a 23.2 at the moment. Ethan Guevara's last lap was a 23.6. And Manu Gonzalez, he also did a 23.2. Alonso over the line then, he does a 1:23.4. So Ortola's advantage in this session as a whole is 7/10 of a second. But looking at the riders who are expected to be the leading contenders, the Intact pair, potentially the Aspar pair, plus Ortola and Guevara, you'd say it's probably those six that look like they are potentially going to, because he's credited Vaya for perhaps showing him the right way around this circuit on a Moto2 bike. A few of the rookies yesterday saying that finding the right lines around here on a Moto2 bike, Moreira said it too, the Moto2 world champion, when he moved to MotoGP. Of course, through that sequence of left-handers, the 7 in a row, it's so important to be precise through there, because if you mess one of them up, it's going to cost you potentially for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 corners, however far into that sequence of left-handers you are. And Rueda definitely using the reference of Vaya yesterday, who himself wasn't too happy with the feeling from his bike, although he is a little happier with what has been a problematic injured right shoulder as of late. But both of them on identical times. Nothing quite demonstrates the fine margins of Moto2 in particular at the moment. Two teammates on absolutely identical times. One is in and one is out.
Yeah, exactly that. 23007 clearly got a good bond down there in the Red Bull KTM IO box, and nice social media post as well from the IO, doing a famous meme as Spider-Man as well, enjoying some of the content that the Moto2 and Moto3 teams are putting out there for us to enjoy. As you rightly mentioned, Lewis, Vaya, happy with how his shoulder's feeling. He's kept quite quiet, to be honest, hasn't he? Sorry, Vaya. We know after the Americas Grand Prix he was struggling with that. That caused a bit of arm pump as well with the injured shoulder that Vaya got. Was absolutely superb to stand on the podium over in Jerez, and hadn't mentioned it too much, which is, to be fair play to Colin for not sort of singing and shouting about it, but he did say that he is continuing to struggle with that shoulder. And obviously yesterday he was happy that there was a few more left-handers here and not quite as physical and demanding as the Cathedral of Speed, his home Grand Prix a couple of weekends ago. Happy to get into the top 14, but knows he's got a bit of a step to make if he wants to try and fight for the absolute top positions. But yeah, he said he was feeling good, just needs to make some improvements in sectors 2, 3 and 4. So pretty much the entire circuit Vaya wants to make improvements on. But yeah, positive to get into the top 14, and the summer break, you feel for Vaya especially, is going to be really important to have 3 weekends off to try and recover, of course, train up to that shoulder and arrive at Silverstone a lot fitter than he has done so far for the majority of this season.
His teammate Rueda has found his first 1:22 of the weekend now. He's just gone up into 6th place now on a 1:22.740. Ortola still enjoying that 7/10 of a second advantage over Senna Aegis. Forsato, as we saw, has split the Intact pair. He's third now on a 22.542 as we follow Rueda once more. Sharply downhill, plunging down the waterfall, as it's affectionately known, from the Ralph Boardman curve down to turn 12, the Saxon curve. And the Queckenberg to complete the lap, turn 13, second gear around 100 or so kilometres an hour on a Moto2 bike as you climb back uphill once again and over the finish line. It's another personal best for Rueda. That's consecutive 1:22.7s now for the reigning Moto3 world champion. His teammate Vire at the moment is still in the 23s and down in 18th place, but Rueda likely to be a major threat in that qualifying one session later on to the likes of Celestino Vietti.
Yeah, 100%. It said, as you rightly mentioned, Lewis, Vire helped him around the lap yesterday in practice, showing him the lines you mentioned over in Assen as well, that it was very tricky in the opening exchanges of the weekend to work out the different lines you have on a Moto2 bike compared to a Moto3 bike. Podium finisher here last year, of course, was Jose Antonio Rueda after starting the Grand Prix from P12. Was disappointed after the Dutch Grand Prix after a really promising run of results that started in Barcelona with his first points of the season, backed it up with points in Italy, then again in Hungary, then his debut top 10 over in Brno as well. So Rueda was disappointed to then finish outside the points after a tricky weekend over in Assen. So yeah, obviously judging from this session and judging from yesterday's session, not too far away. Well, couldn't get any closer to the top 14 as we mentioned, Rueda. So I agree, he's absolutely one of the favourites to go through into Q2 later on this afternoon, and looking like returning to the points, which would be good to see for the reigning Moto3 world champion, who I think can be pretty proud of his performance in the opening half of his Moto2 campaign, of course, after what unfolded at the end of last season.
Just looking at the lap-by-lap analysis yesterday, by the way, of this tiebreaker between the Red Bull KTM riders. Colin Vie's best lap was a 1:23.007. Do you have a guess what his second best lap was? 0:08. There was another 1:23.007.
Wow.
There's no better way of taking the tiebreaker than that from Colin Vie. He could say, yeah, how many did you do? You did one of them. Well, I did two, mate.
Yeah,
that's why I'm in qualifying too. Jose Antonio Rueda's second best lap was a positively pedestrian 1:23.055, which is why Colin Vie took the tiebreaker and with it a place in qualifying two. Here he is on the number 95. Yeah, they were, what were they, 3 laps apart in the end. 2 laps apart, actually, for Colin Vie. He did 3 consecutive 23.0s. 2 of them identical on a 1:23.007. His reward is to keep up his 100% automatic Q2 record. 11 out of 11 now this season for Colin Vie. He is one of just 4 riders who can say that. The other 3, Ivan Ortola, Manu Gonzalez, and yesterday's pace setter Ifan Kvara, who haven't had to go through a single Q1 session so far this season. Vie is set to potentially move up as high as second if he gets this final sector right, because there's an awfully big gap for him to fit himself into between Ortola and Holgado. 0.6 of a second is the difference between the two. A poor-ish third sector for Vie, because it's all relative, because Ortola is a long way ahead of the field, and he's unfortunately exceeded track limits, so any hope of moving up from 13th place has now disappeared. Keeping an eye on Holgado's pace, he's also lost time through the third sector. He has at least got himself up in his second place now. Here he is on the 96, cutting the gap to Ivan Ortola down to 0.6 of a second.
Yeah, just set his fastest lap of the session so far. Daniel Holgado finished outside of the top 10 yesterday in P12. Didn't quite feel comfortable, he said, but did feel good on used tyres, which is absolutely crucial. But over 1 lap, didn't quite have the pace of the top guys, so he'll be hoping to find a little bit more later on in qualifying, as we know now. As he's known for probably a couple of months, as we've known for a couple of months, that he is moving up to MotoGP next year, so there's no pressure for Holgado to perform in terms of securing a future spot. But he did say on Thursday, when I had a nice catch up with him, that he knows that he's got to just iron out a couple of details to really try and drag himself into the mix in this Moto2 title chase, which is of course led by the rider we're on board with, Manu Gonzalez. Saw Ethan Guevara, they're getting a bit frustrated, didn't quite catch who it was, and is this a moment for the championship leader through turns 9 and 10? Not a massive moment, but certainly one that would have given Gonzalez a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah, it looked like Gonzalez was on new tyres there, but they certainly don't look particularly fresh anymore, having caked them with gravel. I think it was Jorge Navarro on the Fantic Kalex that Guevara was getting a little cross with into the Queckenberg turn 13. Did still set a personal best to Guevara, but it's only a 22.5. I say only a 1:22.5. That would have been just a 10th and a half of the lap record yesterday. Ivan Ortola has certainly blown that to smithereens. David Alonso has now taken second place on the other Aspar Kalex, so they're now second and third. Alonso has found a 22.2, which would have put him fastest yesterday, but of course the goalposts have been significantly moved. Guevara's got more traffic to worry about. This time it's Joe Roberts that he's had to negotiate through the third sector and into the sector now where Guevara has felt the strongest so far this weekend. Is he going to prove himself right and cut the gap to Ivan Artola? Across the line he goes, and he loses another tenth or so in that final sector, but he does at least split the Aspar pair and take third.
Yeah, good lap time then from Guevara. I do feel like there's some fresh rubber being slotted in here by the Moto2 riders. Looking ahead to qualifying, of course, later on this afternoon. Alonso has moved up to P2 now, just shy of 4 tenths away from Ivan Ortola's impressive time. New all-time lap record, of course, for Ortola. Guevara, of course, had to navigate his way past Joe Roberts in that final split, so maybe why cost him a little bit of time. We'll see if Guevara can improve on this lap time around, but as mentioned a couple of times already, you're only going to get 1, maybe 2 laps at it when you're really pushing on that fresh rubber in qualifying mode. Alonso makes a little bit of a mistake there in the final split, but another decent session for the number 80 as he tries to go for a third straight pole position.
Yeah, no improvement for Gonzalez on the lap after that sort of gravel track excursion up at turn 10. So he's still down in 7th place at the moment as we pick up Guevara once again. And yet again, Guevara does find himself in traffic. That is going to be a feature, even in the qualifying sessions, which will have fewer riders on track, of course. We'll only have, 8 or so, or 14 riders in total in qualifying 1 and 18 in qualifying 2 later on. But you will still find around a circuit as tight and as compact as this, just 3.6 kilometres, 2.3 miles, give or take, that you're going to find some riders in the wrong part of the racetrack. Guevara getting a little hot under the collar here in this FP2 session. Every time he's got a bit of momentum into his session, he's found some traffic in the wrong part of the lap.
Yeah, he'll feel like if he has slotted some fresh rubber in, which we do believe he has, with the times dropping in this session, that he might have missed a chance to get a real feel for proper time attack mode. Of course, he got that yesterday, but conditions have changed. Track conditions look like they've improved dramatically from yesterday. So you can understand frustration for Guevara, but it is only FP2. The team will try and calm him down. Nothing too much to worry about. Just encountered a bit of traffic, which of course couldn't be the case in qualifying later on. The Aspar mechanic there clapping Alonso over the line. As mentioned, they'll be pretty pleased with what they've seen so far this weekend. Jorge Martinez, Aspar, they're looking on, and a decent session for Vira as well. Looks like he didn't put some fresh rubber in, trying to test the endurance potentially of that shoulder in race trim as well, but he'll be heading straight into Q2 later on. And again, Lewis, another pretty intriguing session in Moto2.
Well, looking at the top 3, it is the same top 3 we had yesterday, albeit in a slightly different order. Guevara, Ortola, Alonso was the top 3 yesterday. It's Ortola, Alonso, Guevara this time, who are your 1, 2, 3. So we'll certainly go into qualifying as your front row favourites later on this afternoon, although we didn't really get a clear idea of just what Manu Gonzalez could deliver on a brand new soft rear tyre at the end, because he ran into the gravel at turns 9 and 10. So he's potentially a little bit of an unknown going into qualifying later on. I do know that Manu Gonzalez can produce a special qualifying lap when he needs it. 3 front row starts already this year for the World Championship leader. Just the 1 pole position, of course, we have already in this Moto2 season. And 8 different pole sitters in the first 11 races. Ivan Ortola, though, he ain't one of them, so he could potentially become the 9th different pole sitter if he can produce anything like that 1:21.8 in qualifying later on today. Ivan Ortola, just the 1 front row so far in his Moto2 career. That was Assen last year. Surely he's got a golden opportunity to double that tally today.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. Does go into qualifying as definitely one of the favourites after yesterday and again this morning as well. Really intrigued to see what happens later on. Do feel like it's a massive qualifying session for these guys. A lot of the top riders up there as well. So looking forward to see how that unfolds. And yeah, looking forward to being in pit lane and listening to Lewis and Kiko appearing commentary. Should be a very good pair of qualifying sessions in Moto3 and in Moto2 as well.
Yeah, reminder, if you're just joining us or perhaps tuning in for the first time this weekend, Max Quiles, the Moto3 World Championship leader, who's certain to be on this Moto2 grid next season, he's in Q1. You can see there Gino Borzoi, who's trying his best to calm down Ivan Guevara, who is bordering on livid, isn't he, with the way that session is. I confirm that is not David Alonso, despite the incorrect graphic that you saw at the bottom of the screens. 2 baby-faced Spanish speakers. That is, without question, Ivan Guevara, who is in a free practice 2 session. It's not the session that matters, Ivan. So perhaps channel that anger and that energy and the fire, and get even in qualifying later on. But cross would be an understatement to describe Ethan. He was having to go through a course of anger management there with Gino Borsoi down there in the Blue Crew Pramac Boscoscuro box. Third in the end for Ethan in that morning session, so by no means a disaster for yesterday's pace setter. World Championship leader Manu Gonzalez 7th, his teammate Senna Agius 5th. Still yet to see them truly show their hand. Surely we'll get that opportunity later. Ivan Ortola with a new Moto2 lap record of the Sachsenring 21.8, which, as mentioned, back in 2010 would have been a MotoGP pole time. He tops the session from David Alonso and Ethan Guevara. Same top three, albeit in a different order as yesterday. Holgado 4th, ahead of Agius. Forasato a fine 6th. Manu Gonzalez 7th. Escrig, Arbolino and Rueda, your top 10, ahead of Salat, Lunetta, Agi, Roberts and Fire. Sasaki 16th, ahead of Celestino Vietti, who's not particularly making much progress. He was 18th yesterday, just one place higher this morning. Huertas and Onchu next up. Onchu with an early crash at turn 3. So Moto2's FP2 completed. Coming up next, we'll begin the countdown to qualifying in MotoGP with their FP2.
Sprint Saturday takes centre stage at the Sachsenring as the Race for Glory in 2026 brings us to the Grand Prix of Germany. The cities of Leipzig, Dresden and Chemnitz sit close by a track that's tight, twisty and tough on tyres. Marc Marquez is looking to remain on the throne as the undisputed king of the Sachsenring, with 2 key qualifying sessions coming up next live. It's time for MotoGP. 3.671 kilometres, 2.281 miles. Welcome to the Sachsenring. Welcome to the shortest track on the Grand Prix calendar. Our 87th Grand Prix in Germany, the 28th time we've run here at this current layout of the Sachsenring, one of 6 anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. A very tight and twisty first sector, including that hard run on the brakes into the first corner. The track really then does open up in spectacular fashion. 4th gear through turn 7, and then the magnificent 5th gear, 200 km an hour sweep through turn 11 before you attack hard up the hill on the brakes into turn 13. A good overtaking of the GT there at the final turn. Good morning and welcome back to what is a gorgeously sunny Saturday here. A Sprint Saturday in the Grand Prix of Germany. We're very, very shortly going to head off on a welcome 3-week summer break. Before that happens though, there's no rest for the wicked. There's no rest for the fastest riders on planet Earth as Marc Marquez goes in search of a 10th MotoGP victory here at his beloved Sachsenring, and the reigning world champion well, he occupied a place which he's very accustomed to here in this part of Eastern Germany, because on Free Practice Friday, at the end of yesterday's 60-minute practice session, it was the 33-year-old Spaniard, a 12-time winner here at the Sachsenring, who did lead the way. A 1:19.394 from Marc Marquez saw him top the timesheets on a Friday for just the second time this season. The only previous time Marc led the way on the opening day of track action was at another one of his circuit's favourites, the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. He was hotly pursued though by the Aprilia of Ralph Fernandez, the informed Spaniard, fresh off the back of a double podium last time out in Assen. A dark horse championship contender, Ralph Fernandez second quickest, and Fabio Di Gianantonio once again finding himself in the top 3 as he looks to close down a 16-point deficit to world championship leader Jorge Martin. Race action will come up later on live at 3 p.m. local time in the 15-lap Tissot Sprint. Marc Marquez, of course, completed the Sprint and Grand Prix winning double here last year So in almost perfect, ideal sunny conditions, we're set for a half-hour FP2 session ahead of Q1 and Q2 in the company of Matt Burton, Lewis Suddaby in the commentary box, Jack Appleyard down in what is a sun-kissed pit lane right now. It is a beautiful Saturday here as we approach what the mid-July point, ready for our summer break. Marc Marquez, Lewis. Normal service was eventually restored yesterday when he led the way at the top of the timesheets, but fast for one lap, but a little bit more pessimistic about his race pace. It was kind of a case with Ralph Fernandez, Fabio Di Giannantonio and Marc Marquez. They're playing this game of, no, he's fastest, no, yeah. No, he's the fastest, no, he's the fastest. Marc, though, was quickest on the timesheets.
Yeah, with the greatest of respect to Marc Marquez, as brilliant as he is, anytime he calls anyone else the favourite at the Sachsenring, I think we're all going to raise our eyebrows and chuckle ever so slightly, because Marc Marquez has such a formidable record at this circuit. He's going for a 10th MotoGP victory here this weekend. It would be a 13th victory if you add on his 2 Moto2 successes and his 2010 125 victory here. Yeah, Marc Marquez, without question, I don't think even he would query this, is the favourite for pole position this morning, given that he doesn't have too many concerns over one lap. But we will see in the sprint later on and in the Grand Prix tomorrow. In terms of laps completed, it is one of the longest Grand Prix of the season. 30 laps the Grand Prix tomorrow. We will see tomorrow whether Marc is indeed right that he's not the fastest, but certainly he starts today as favourite.
Made his 200th MotoGP start here last year, did Marc Marquez, and it was a very enjoyable experience because he was on pole, he won the sprint, and he won the Grand Prix in pretty dominant fashion as well. His closest challenge yesterday came from the banging form Ralph Fernandez. Sprint winner last time out in Assen, second in that memorable first ever Superfar Trackhouse 1-2 behind his teammate Ai Ogura. Second Friday in a row that Ralph Fernandez has been second quickest. He led the opening session yesterday morning, so that momentum gained in the Netherlands for the 25-year-old Spaniard on the number 25 machine has carried forward into this Grand Prix of Germany. We'd be foolish to write Fernandez off this weekend, Lewis.
No question about that, and it proves once again that even around a circuit that Ducati will feel confident that will suit them. The Aprilia still working very nicely indeed. All 4 Aprilias are through to qualifying 2, although I guess all 4 of them have got their own various stories to tell from yesterday. Marco Bezzecchi in particular and Jorge Martin, far from easy Fridays for them, even if they are both into qualifying 2. But without question, Aprilia, even at a circuit that Ducati would consider a suitable circuit for them, Aprilia very much in contention.
Marc Marquez very much in contention and very much in control of proceedings on day one. A tough Friday though for his teammate Pecco Bagnaia, who said it was more flat track than MotoGP on his factory Ducati yesterday. Bagnaia coming up in Q1 later on this morning after being 13th yesterday. Let's get some thoughts from factory Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi, who joins Jack.
At home, as you rightly say, Bertie, it's the pit lane. A fabulous Saturday morning here, and it looked like a strong first day for Marc yesterday, Davide, which is no surprise around the Sachsenring, but he was wanting to try and take the pressure off his shoulders, saying that maybe some of the others are favourites. Are you buying that when he can win his 10th MotoGP race potentially here this weekend?
I think he's right, because obviously there's still a body problem, so 30 laps, 15 today and 30 tomorrow will be a very long race for the body. Here there is no time to rest during the lap, so that's why he's a bit afraid. Obviously he knows that he's fast, but I'm sure that the Aprilias and somebody else, I'm sure Di Giannantonio will be very fast, so it's not something that is already right on the paper.
We've already seen this season Assen last time out, a clear example that different circuits are benefiting other motorcycles. So how important at this venue is it for Ducati and Marc in particular for the championship to take full advantage of a venue that clearly suits him?
Yeah, for sure, gaining some points, reduce the gap to the championship leader is very important for us before the holidays. But anyway, we know our potential, and we know that after August we think that Marc could be really much better on the body side, and maybe in the second part of the season he can put more effort, more strength on the bike and trying to show his potential.
And just quickly before the bike bikes head out. Pecco, as the guy said, a difficult opening day. What's your opinion on what happened?
Yeah, yesterday we faced a lot of problem of grip, confidence, and I hope that the new setup we have this morning will help him. We'll see immediately after a couple of laps. We understand if the way we took is the right one.
For the second race in a row, it's a KTM rider that he's upset. On this occasion, it was Pedro Acosta. Last time out in Assen, it was Enea Bastianini, but for that bulking of Acosta on a fast lap, it's once again another 3-place grid penalty incoming for Frankie Morbidelli. He's not the only one that found himself in a spot of bother yesterday. Diogo Moreira also has the same sanction, the LCR Honda rider who was down in 17th place yesterday. Moreira guilty of bulking Luca Marini, who was on a hot lap yesterday, so a 3-place grid penalty as well, coming the way of the Moto2 world champion.
I know what some of you will be thinking back at home reading that. Wasn't Frankie Morbidelli's second offence back in Assen? Well, offences if you disrupt someone or you're slow on line in the final 20 minutes of a practice session, as Diogo Moreira was. That is a separate offence which carries its own first, second offence.
It was like riding a flat track bike around this Sachsenring circuit. Did the double MotoGP world champion who's been on the podium here in his last 3 visits to the Sachsenring. So they're going to be hoping it's 5th time lucky as Fernandez, Fabio Di Gianantonio were your top 3 yesterday. Going straight through to Q2 was Alex Marquez and the quite brilliant Jack Miller. What a performance by the Prima Pramac Yamaha rider, Fabio Quartararo and Alex. By Miller, Ayagura, our most recent winner in Assen, Marco Bezzecchi, now the former MotoGP World Championship leader, Jorge Martin, who is the World Championship leader, Pedro Acosta and Frankie Morbidelli. Those 10 already through to Q2, just to cover off the state of play from yesterday.
And here is Pedro Acosta, who might find the going tough to get himself up the grid later on. He said he felt much better in race mode, but when he went into time attack mode, he found it slightly tougher. Did squeeze through though in that 9th place on a 120.026. Was through by just 19 thousandths at the expense of another KTM rider, and they have Bastianini, who missed out in 11th. That two heavyweight names that are in a qualifying one later on, as well as the Hondas. We've already covered Moreira and his penalty. Honda kind of flattered to deceive a little bit in practice yesterday. At one point we had Marini and Mir up inside the top 6, but as others improved, Honda couldn't improve at the same rate, and that's why all 4 of their riders dropped out of the top 10.
Yeah, Bastianini not helped by the fact that he had a tumble late on in practice at turn 8. That really ended his hopes of a spot in the top 10. Pedro Acosta reporting he was very, very happy, fresh off the back of recent carpal tunnel surgery. We saw him have to retire about the halfway point of that Grand Prix of the Netherlands. That lack of feeling, the numbness, the pain, the tingling sensation in his right hand. He did have surgery straight after Assen, and he said the good news was yesterday he did not miss a single braking marker. So clearly that arm that's perhaps been falling asleep on him over the last 12 months or so, the corrective surgery has worked instantly. So good news for Pedro Acosta, as Pecco Bagnaia delivers an opening 121.520. It's 4th time this year, isn't it, that Pecco's been in Q1. He was in Q1 in our season opener in Buriram. He was there in Catalonia. He was there most recently in Hungary, but he's back there again, once again, this morning for the 4th time of the campaign.
Yeah, he's only got a 33% success rate so far in those Q1 sessions. Was eliminated in qualifying 1 in Buriram when he qualified 13th, and then 13th again was where he started. And then Barcelona when he found himself in qualifying 1. Of course, he did
in all of his own doing. The altercation with the marshal, seeing him banned from Brno and then just perhaps a little bit too impatient, a little bit too eager to get on with business early on in Assen. A huge crash he had coming through the left-hander of turn 15. It wasn't just the speed of the crash, it was the distance that Bezzecchi then careered through what was a very, very long gravel trap. As Bez then keeps himself inside the top 6. Alex Marquez is now then the third rider that's broke into 120s this morning. I think it's fair to say Alex probably still only around sort of 80-85% fit himself, still not back to full fitness after that nasty incident he had with Pedro Acosta in his home Grand Prix in Barcelona.
We did say yesterday there were no physical limitations on the bike, which I guess we have to take as a positive. Of course, the longer the weekend goes, the more that may change, as he has to complete, 15 sprint laps later on today, and then 30 Grand Prix laps tomorrow afternoon for Alex Marquez. Of course, came here last year not 100% after the recent crash in Assen when he tangled with Pedro Acosta last year, but still took a second place here in the end, albeit a slightly fortuitous one. And Alex Marquez, he's potentially outside of that top 3 yesterday, because he was next best in 4th position. He's potentially another dark horse who could muscle in on the front row battle in Q2 in about an hour's time.
Third in 2024, second here last year was Alex Marquez, so he's got good recent pedigree around this Sachsenring circuit. He's taken a big chunk of time out of the pursuing pack here this morning. He's over 4/10 of a second clear of anybody else. How's Jack Miller getting on? We shouldn't reference Miller because he rode out of his skin. He rode his heart out yesterday, didn't he? The Australian, fresh off another podium in the Suzuka 8-hour endurance race over in Japan. So whatever jet lag Jack is carrying into this Sachsenring Grand Prix, the track where he made his Grand Prix debut 15 years ago, back in 2011, it certainly wasn't disrupting him. He always felt this was going to be an opportunity to impress on the new V4-powered WiseStar M1, did Jack Miller. This track all about corner speed. Corner speed a lot more beneficial than just outright brute power. And he said yesterday, we know that the Yamaha this year is lacking 15 to 20 horsepower, so at fast tracks, wide open tracks like Austin, like Barcelona, like Mugello, like Brno Riesling, they're getting killed in terms of the horsepower battle. But where power is not really key around a tight track like the Sachsenring, you can use other strengths of your package, and Jack did that quite brilliantly. As mentioned, Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins both said, well, one goal they had last night was to pour over Jack's data, because they thought, well, Fabio Quartararo said, he thought, well, yeah, that 120.2, I was on the limit, I was really pushing for that lap time, came in and saw that Jack was almost half a second faster. So chapeau was the message from Quartararo.
Yeah, I don't think there's any use looking at Jack Miller's setup to try and get any idea as to how he did it. I think that all just came purely from Jack Miller demonstrating that. While there are plenty of rumours that potentially he may not be in this paddock next season, which certainly would be a loss to MotoGP, Jack Miller still has plenty to offer at this level. The sole Yamaha, as it stands through to qualifying 2, we have 4 Ducatis through: Marc Marquez, Fabio Gianantonio, Alex Marquez and Frankie Morbidelli. The 4 Aprilias, including, of course, the man we're on board with here, the Assen winner Ayagura. We have the 1 KTM of Pedro Acosta at this stage, automatically through to Q2, plus Jack Miller's Yamaha.
Ayagura does have a chance of heading into the summer break. Might seem like a long shot, but it's still a Joan Mir in the Grand Prix. 17th in the sprint was one of the poorer performances of what was ultimately a very impressive rookie campaign from Ayagura. He was through yesterday in 6th place, just over half a second behind Marc Marquez. 11th fastest so far this morning. Izagura-san, his best work at 121.268 as he looks to go for more history in the Grand Prix tomorrow. Never, ever in Grand Prix history in the top class has a Japanese rider been able to win back-to-back Grand Prix.
Q2 coming up then for him, clearly having solved the major weakness, which was qualifying 2, let's face it, for Ayagura, and getting himself up the grid. He's becoming a major threat. He's no longer a dark horse, is he, in this World Championship battle? He is a genuine contender. 25 points covering that top 4. And any one of those 4, Jorge Martin, Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Gianantonio or Ayagura, could lead the Sachsenring this weekend. It will be one of those 4 that leaves here as the World Championship leader. But if you go back further than that, there are, I think, as many as 8 riders who, as we reach the halfway stage of the season, will still feel they've got a major say in this World Championship battle. 63 points covers that top 8, which also includes Marc Marquez, Raul Fernandez, Pedro Acosta and Pecco Bagnaia.
Alex Marquez still leading the way then at 120.333. 4 tenths clear of his brother Mark. Those 2 know what it's like to stand together on the podium here in the Sachsenring. They've done it the last 2 years. Back in 2024, it was a bit of a novelty. It was a very rare occurrence. That's for the first time since 1997. Two brothers stood together on a Premier Class podium. Aguro's jumped up to 4th, having sat just on the fringe of the top 10 for most of the early part of this session. Pekka Bagnaia certainly found some grip in the first sector. As you can see, fastest in split 1. He said yesterday just zero grip. It was like he was back at the VR46 training ranch back in Tavullia. Alex Marquez strong in the middle part of the circuit, and then Marc Marquez, that's sector 4, including the 2 left-handers to complete the short lap here in the Sachsenring. No surprise to see Marc super strong in that final split.
Yeah, pretty much all of his advantage yesterday was in that 4th sector. His overall advantage was a 10th.5, and that's exactly how far ahead of the rest he was in that 4th sector. And it's a very short sector as well, just 19 seconds in length. This is the final corner, turn 13, that Marc Marquez and Jorge Martin are exiting from. Doesn't quite do justice there. Of course, that is the sort of plateau as you come over the crest to approach the final corner. If you try and make your way up from turn 13 up to the finish line on foot, it is quite a steep climb, let me tell you.
So 2 wins and 2 7th places for Marc Marquez since his injury return. He was in safe mode. That was the crystal clear message from Marc last time out in Assen. Safety mode fully engaged. I think the leash is a little bit more off here this weekend. Would be a surprise. He keeps playing down the fact that, oh, well, if I don't win the sprint, if I don't win the Grand Prix, it's not a disaster, it's not a major problem. It isn't, but of course when you've got a record like Marc Marquez possesses around the Sachsenring, I think everybody expects him to get here and get the job done. There is Pekka Bagnaia there, looking very, very strong this morning, back inside the top 3. That's more like it, is it, from Bagnaia, especially yesterday, a 1:20.132. So he's one of 4 riders this morning. It's in the 1:20s.
This is a spectacular section of the circuit, isn't it? It's another one where if you get the opportunity, if you're ever here at the Sachsenring and you get the opportunity to watch trackside, head over to turn 11 to the Ralph Waldman curve. You get to see the riders at their bravest, where they demonstrate their immense skill. But you also really just the jaw-dropping visual of seeing them plunge almost off the face of the earth from turn 11 down towards turn 12. The elevation change is just a small part of the challenge of this Sachsenring circuit. And we've seen, if you get it wrong through that particular section, Maverick Vinales will tell you that after his crash yesterday morning in free practice 1. We've seen several others into that club over the years. If you get it wrong through that 5th gear, turn 11, it will bite you hard.
Aguro, just the 7th ever Japanese winner in the MotoGP World Championship. His success in Assen, their first win in 7,952 days since Makoto Tamada in his home Grand Prix in Japan back in 2004. Big news pre-weekend, of course, for Aguro-san signing with the factory Yamaha team. I make that he's going to be the first Japanese rider on a factory bike since Toru Okawa back in 2003 when he was part of Honda. I'm going to be thinking maybe Norikabe was the last full-time Japanese rider on a Japanese motorcycle in a factory-backed team back in 2004. He'll form that star-studded lineup with this man, Jorge Martin, in Yamaha next season.
Let's head down to pit lane then. Is Fabio Di Giannantonio potentially the big threat to Marc Marquez in qualifying later on? Let's get the thoughts of Pablo Nieto with Jack.
Yeah, if you look at the timesheets of yesterday, that certainly is the case. Fabio on race pace, actually quicker than Marc Marquez. I imagine, Pablo, there's a sense of confidence down here that you can really take the fight to Marc today and tomorrow.
We don't know, because in the end, Marc Marquez, we know that here are completely one of the top riders. I remember he won here 12 times, so he's the man to try to beat him. But anyway, I think we are in a good level. We have to try to be focused on our job, and then we will see what happens. No? At the moment, it's really, really important to try to make a very good qualifying, because we know this track is so difficult to make the overtakes. So I think for this weekend, 80% is the qualifying.
16 points. Fabio now adrift to the World Championship lead. He could go into the summer break as the World Championship leader. If that was to be the case, what would that mean for Fabio for the very first time and for VR46 for the very first time to lead the MotoGP World Championship?
Yeah. that means that at the moment we are making a very good job, no? But we have to think race by race. At the moment, so many races still that we have to make it. So we cannot. I think it's a mistake if we are thinking about the championship, no? Of course, it's true that we are very close to the leader. But anyway, this is MotoGP. We know that it's very, very difficult. We have to, like I say, no, we have to think race by race, and then we will see what happens.
We've had some big news coming into the weekend. VR46 remaining with Ducati as the factory-supported team for another couple of years. Ducati have confirmed their lineup. Gresini have confirmed their lineup. But Fermín Aldeguer has a Ducati contract. You're a Ducati team, but still no confirmation. Can we put 2 and 2 together there?
Yeah, we are really happy that we confirmed 3 more years with Ducati. No, we are a factory support team from Ducati. We are working really, really good together. In the end, we can say it like we are factory, no? Because it's really important to try to working like this, because if we are working like this, we can see that the results are coming for Ducati, for the team, for everything. So it's really important. No? At the moment, we have to work for the riders for this year. We are almost closed, but I think we can enjoy it a lot with Ducati, with the riders for next year.
Thanks, Pablo. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to VR46 boss Pablo Niechin to be the lead independent Ducati squad for 2027, 2028 and 2029. That will include the provision for a full factory-supported motorcycle, which will be destination Fermín Aldeguer, who continues to be missing this weekend, unfortunately, after the back fracture he suffered last time out in Assen. And Nicolo Bulega, who's looking to extend his incredible undefeated run in World Superbikes so far this season. He's over at a very sunny, surprisingly sunny, Donington Park over in the UK for their latest round, Chapter 8 in this year's World Superbike Championship. Nicolo Bulega saying yesterday at Donington Park he is now very, very close to securing a MotoGP deal for 2027, which looks like his seat will be alongside Aldeguer in VR46 next year. It'd be good to welcome Nicolo over to MotoGP on a full-time basis. Of course, he has had a couple of replacement rides, a couple of wildcard rides, and acquitted himself very, very well.
Yeah, it's one of those weekends as a motorcycle racing fan where you're going to need all the different devices, different screens, tablets, laptops, all the rest of it available to you to follow all of the action with MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 over here. Of course, the World Superbike Championship, the Women's Championship could also be decided this weekend over at Donington Park as well. So there is so much to keep abreast of as we get set to head off on our summer breaks at the end of this weekend. We are hoping to go out with a bang this weekend. On board then with Marco Bezzecchi, who's shown no signs yet in this weekend of limiting his mileage. He's on his 10th lap at the moment in this session, which is just one fewer than the busiest rider in this session. Raul Fernandez and Jorge Martin have each put in 11 laps, but with every lap that Marco Bezzecchi cuts around the Sachsenring circuit, his body will continue to ache and push him even further into his reserves of energy.
Not seen much so far this morning in Maverick Vinales, just on the 6 laps as the Spaniard. We might not see him at all, unfortunately, in 2027, with lots of stories, lots of rumours that this current tension in the talks between Vinales, Tech3 and KTM in particular look like they have completely broken down. So no ride next season, potentially for Vinales, no pace at all so far this morning as well. He's dead last with a 1:22.823. He's almost 2.5 seconds behind Alex Marquez. Not helped by a confidence-sapping crash at turn 11 yesterday, Maverick, but problems brewing on and off the circuit for the 31-year-old Spaniard.
It's getting rather acrimonious, isn't it, at the moment, and it feels like it's heading to a very messy divorce down there between Maverick Vinales and the Tech3 squad. Certainly feels as if a bit of claim and counter-claim is going on in terms of what truly has happened behind the scenes there at KTM, and it's a real shame, isn't it? 12 months on, it feels as if the beginning of the end of Maverick Vinales' MotoGP career was here in that rain-affected qualifying session in his crash up at turn 4 in Q2 last year. Sadly for Maverick, he hasn't really been the same since. At the moment, he's down at the bottom of the order in 21st. No signs of light for him.
And Tech3 boss Gunther Steiner yesterday had a round table with the media, and once again not really offering much encouragement about Maverick Vinales retaining that seat in Tech3 next year. It seems like it's 2 from 3 to slot into Tech 3 next year. Senna Aegis and current Moto2 World Championship leader Manu Gonzalez, the current Intact teammates in Moto2, very, very strong contenders. Are they going to gamble and risk it on 2 rookies, or are they going to call on a rookie, the exciting potential future talents of Aegis and Gonzalez, or will they opt for a more experienced candidate as well? If they do so, there's plenty to pick from when you look at the likes of Jack Miller, Brad Binder, Frankie Morbidelli, Luca Marini and Alex Rins all out of work next year. Looks like Marini is going to be the serious contender if they do go or plump for experience. Let's go and get a bit of a KTM update from down in pit lane with Jack.
Yeah, just spotted a familiar face for fans of four-wheeled motorsport. He's a visitor, I remember, a couple of years ago at the Red Bull Ring. The gentleman in question, Andreas Seidl.
Some big news, some significant news relating to KTM. They have re-upped with Red Bull. They have, of course, been long-term partners, haven't they, Red Bull and the Austrian factory. There was a few murmurings that maybe Red Bull would be looking to link up with Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta in the factory Ducati team next year. No details on the length of the contract, just a confirmation of a renewal between KTM and Red Bull. There was no news on whether that would also include Tech 3, as it currently does. And there was an interesting comment from Gunther Steiner yesterday where he said whatever 2 riders he has on top of RC16s next year, they will not be directly contracted to KTM. They will be hired and maybe fired, let's hope not, by Gunther Steiner himself. So interesting to see how that sort of Red Bull renewal does impact on the satellite operation. But yeah, good news at least for the factory KTM team, because Alex Marquez and Fabio Di Gianantonio, they line up for next year, will definitely be backed by Red Bull.
Yeah, it feels hard to visualise a KTM without Red Bull sponsorship on it. Yeah, it does beg the question whether potentially Gunther Steiner is going to be provided with free rein to chase his own investment and his own sponsorship. Potentially use some of his many connections that he has from his time in Formula 1 to support his Tech 3 operation next season. And it would appear he is, as Matt mentioned, going for a blend of youth and experience at that Tech 3 squad next season. And it doesn't appear, sadly, as if the experienced head will be Brad Binder, whose time in MotoGP exclusively spent with KTM. Looks like that is also coming to an end at the end of the season.
Yeah, the news that Steiner will take over the contracts of his 2 riders, it just sounds like he wants to be a little bit more in control of his own destiny, doesn't it? Tread his own path in the MotoGP World Championship. That early 120.333 from Alex Marquez has not been troubled at all in this session. To be fair to him, he might be battered, he might be bruised, but he's still pushing hard, as you knew he would do. Marco Bezzecchi is his closest rival. 120.659 is the best we've seen from Bez this morning. Can he overturn a 7-point deficit to his teammate Jorge Martin and wrestle back control of this year's MotoGP World Championship? Might be a good opportunity here this weekend if his pain threshold holds up, because it was an out of sorts for Martin yesterday. Did not look comfortable at any stage on that factory Aprilia. He was 8th fastest yesterday, was Martin. He's 8th fastest this morning. Is that his ceiling? He'll certainly be hoping it's not.
Yeah, Fabio Quartararo was almost approaching the ceiling there as the rear was stepping up, coming through turn 10. As the Yamaha was sort of snaking around underneath him. Quartararo's up into the top 6 now in this FP2 session. We've got 2 Yamahas up in the top 10. Quartararo and Toprak Razgatlioglu for Toprak. That's just a 1/10.5 away from what he did in time attack mode yesterday. So some positive signs from a couple of other Yamahas. Of course, 3 of them in the qualifying 1 session. One of those has already been on the floor in this FP2 session. Alex Rins, who went down at turn 1, but Quartararo and Toprak inside the top 10. And potentially Quartararo, one of those who may threaten the likes of Bagnaia and Bastianini in the upcoming Q1 session.
Yeah, Bastianini was saying yesterday he was really suffering with edge grip, particularly on the front, which can just cause you monumental, because you are on the side of the tyre for so long. I mean, there's very little parts of this type Sachsenring complex where you're not at some form of lean angle. So if you are struggling for edge grip, well, then you're struggling for pace, you're struggling for time around this Sachsenring circuit. As we look at the 2 factory Aprilias go about their business on this fine Saturday morning here in Germany. working perfectly in tandem together. What a great shot that is. One of the greatest corners on the Grand Prix calendar. It is one that really, really does take your breath away. Blind entry, full commitment, full attack, 200 kilometres an hour, plunging down the hill. Good overtaking opportunity as well. If you can get the momentum through turn 10 and then more crucially through 11, you can really set yourself up for a move on the brakes into the third gear, turn 12, the Saxon curve. I wonder how long it took them to come up with that name for that one. Probably not too long.
It's the Saxon Teanery next year as they celebrate 100 years of this circuit. As Aigura moves up into 6th place, he's into the 120s. He's getting his eye in for qualifying 2. Both of the Trackhouse Aprilias are out there on brand new soft front, soft rear tyres. Raul Fernandez putting his to good use as he now moves up into 2nd place. So we now have a Ducati top from a pair of Aprilias, 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, one of Raul Fernandez's 5 front row starts in his MotoGP career did come here back in 2024 when he was featuring on a double front row for Trackhouse on occasion when Miguel Oliveira also found himself on the front row. But here's your fastest rider so far on Sprint Saturday here today. It is Alex Marquez, who said he's looking forward to the respite of the summer break just to get himself back in prime tip-top physical shape. Because it's been a tough recent run for Alex on the 73 bike, confirming what we've known for quite some time pre-weekend. There'll be a factory KTM rider next year, a factory opportunity that when it came his way at the age of 30, he just simply could not say no to. I think Alex was pretty much resigned to knowing that there was no seat for him in the present and probably in the future in the factory, the Caddy team. So his factory ambitions were going to have to be fulfilled and realised in a new project. So yeah, Alex will be part of that very experienced KTM lineup next year. I mean, they won't be too far shy of 500 Grand Prix appearances between them, will they? Digit and Alex when we get underway in the new 850cc era next year.
So Marc Marquez ends this FP2 session in 5th, but continuing to lap in the mid to high 120s right through the end of the session. His previous lap was a 20.9. He's just followed that up with a 20.8. And Marc Marquez will now turn his attentions to qualifying 2 as he chases yet another Sachsenring pole. Of course, took pole position here 1 year ago in very different circumstances and very different conditions in very heavy rain. It's blazing sunshine today as the 93 targets more Sachsenring success.
Well, you really know how much Marc Marquez was in safe mode last time out in Aston. It was only the 4th time in 26 appearances for the factory Ducati team. He didn't score at least one podium finish across a weekend. 6th in the sprint, 7th in the Grand Prix, having started from 7th place. As mentioned, since he returned from that double surgery on the right foot and more crucially the right shoulder, there's been a pair of 7th places and a pair of wins for Marc on Sundays. And it has driven him though firmly back into contention to successfully defend his world title. I think when he took the break for Le Mans and Catalonia, at that point, after Mugello, when he slipped 102 points behind Marco Bezzecchi, even Marc himself, who is the eternal optimist, always finds the positive in any kind of negative, adverse situation. Even Marc was writing himself off at that stage. Shows how quickly things can change, how quickly the complexion of a championship battle can change. But now all of a sudden, Marc Marquez just got 40 points off the top of the standings. Only 15 points behind Aigura, currently sitting in 4th overall in the standings.
Yeah, we can quite easily turn around the other way too, which I guess might be in Marc Marquez's mind, just how far in terms of the risk-reward ratio is he prepared to push it this weekend. How far would he need to push it? Is he going to have the kind of pace advantage that he often has here around the Sachsenring, that he can ride to within that 100% and not take the altogether risks that have sometimes led to those crashes and injuries in the past?
Once again, Marco Bezzecchi engaging the rear eye device to make that Aprilia as low as it possibly can be, to make his dismount as comfortable as it possibly can be, because he is suffering. He's in an awful lot of pain right now, Marco Bezzecchi. Pedro Acosta, well, Kel Surprise, he is once again the top KTM in that session, 4th fastest for the Spaniard. One of 8 riders that lapped in the 120s this morning. Acosta's best of 120.716 as he looks to stop a big slump in recent form. 9th place in the Assen Sprint is the only point Acosta has scored in the last 2 rounds, and that has seen him slip down to 7th in the World Championship.
Even that was a bit of a salvage job, wasn't it, after he went wide, went off the road at the very start of that sprint. So we'll see Acosta on at least one KTM in qualifying 2. We'll find out in the upcoming Q1 session whether any of the other RC16s will join them, because they're all in Q1. Alex Marquez with a 120.333, fastest in FP2 from a pair of Aprilias, Ralph Fernandez and Marco Bezzecchi. KTM's leader was Acosta, once again in 4th, ahead of the factory Ducati pair of Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, who set their fastest laps very early in the session. Agura 7th from Quartararo Martin and Toprak Razgatioglu. Marini leading the Honda charge in 11th, ahead of Binder Mir, Di Giannantonio and Rins, who went down at turn 1. Enea Bastianini, who crashed yesterday afternoon, which put him in Q1, 16th, ahead of Diogo Moreira and Frankie Morbidelli, who of course each have 3-place grid penalties to serve tomorrow. Jack Miller 19th, he's coming up in Q2, ahead of Cal Crutchlow and Maverick Vinales right at the back.
So Ducati have taken the last 5 pole positions here at the Sachsenring. Can they make it a Super 6 in a row? Well, they've started Sprint Saturday in great fashion. Alex Marquez leads FP2. Coming up next live, Q1 and Q2 here at the Sachsenring. Welcome back to the Sachsenring. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of Germany. The 2026 MotoGP World Championship reaches the halfway stage this weekend. Round 11 of 22 coming your way. It's Sprint Saturday in our 11th chapter of a campaign which has already had numerous and pretty big plot twists. The most recent of them being Ai Ogura becoming the first Japanese rider in over 2 decades to win in the MotoGP World Championship. Ogura now a genuine, serious World Championship title contender. Jorge Martin, after Marco Bezzecchi's disastrous early high-speed crash in the Grand Prix of the Netherlands, coming into a MotoGP weekend at the top of the World Championship classification for the first time since the final Grand Prix of 2024, where he was ultimately crowned World Champion for the very first time. Ai Ogura and Jorge Martin will feature in a star-studded all-new factory Yamaha team in 2027. But here in Saxony, in the present day, it is Ducati who are hunting their 6th successive pole position here at this historic, this magnificent Sachsenring circuit. The fans enjoying some beautiful conditions, a little bit of a breeze about, as you can see from the flags in the top of your picture, but it is blazing sunshine ahead of what we hope is going to be some blazing hot laps in Q1 and Q2 coming up shortly. Bastianini, Binder, Bagnaia, Marini, Quartararo, Mir, Moreira, Vinales, Razgatlioglu, Rins and Crutch. Alex Rins had a tumble in FP2 this morning at the first corner. They're coming up in Q1, already safely through to Q2, hunting a 10th MotoGP success here tomorrow is reigning world champion Marc Marquez, Ralph Fernandez, Fabio Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez, who just led the way in FP2 this morning, Jack Miller, Ai Ogura, Bezzecchi, Martin, Acosta and Morbidelli all directly through to Q2. A little bit of a footnote about Morbidelli and Moreira, irrespective of where they do end up at the end of our 2 qualifying sessions this morning. They do both face 3-place grid penalties for the 30-lap Grand Prix here tomorrow. But it's all eyes once again on Marc Marquez. 9 MotoGP victories here at his beloved Sachsenring, 12 in total in his illustrious career. Can he add another one to the collection? He was fastest here yesterday, but coming up next it's the fight for our 11th pole position of the season. If there's going to be full factory Ducati representation in our second 50-minute qualifying session, well, Pecco Bagnaia is going to find himself in the top 2 in Q1, because for just the 4th time this season, Lewis, he finds himself stuck in the jungle.
He does, and in the 3 previous Q1 appearances for Pecco Bagnaia so far this season, he's gone through once and been knocked out twice. 20% of the time this year he's been on the front row of the grid. Front row is really his target at the moment. He needs to make sure at the very least he's on the front 4 rows of the grid. That is his target in this Q1 session. The major threat to Pecco Bagnaia, if you're looking at the form of the weekend so far and the general qualifying form of this season, this will be one of them. Fabio Quartararo, we know he can produce a special qualifying lap when he needs to. Came through Q1 last time out in Assen, of course. Also came through Q1 back at the French Grand Prix, his home round at Le Mans. We've also got KTM involvement and representation in the form of Bastianini, Binder and Vinales, who will also look to challenge. And all 4 Hondas, as mentioned earlier on, are in this session after they were tumbled out of the top 10 after showing some decent mid-session form in practice yesterday. They ultimately tumbled down outside the top 10.
There is one Yamaha already through to Q2, and that was in the hands of the brilliant Jack Miller, who really did excel here yesterday. Jack finding a 1:19.841 to get himself through in a superb 5th position. Work to do for the Honda HRC Castrol duo. Luca Marini 14th fastest yesterday. Joan Mir 16th. Turning in the tight sections, not really the forte, not really the strong point of the factory Honda, both reporting here yesterday. Poor old Joan Mir. A double DNF last time out in Assen. Well, he's had plenty of those before in his career, but he was the first rider in sprint and Grand Prix history to not complete a single race lap across a weekend. He was out on the first lap of the sprint, he was out on the first lap of the Grand Prix. That has never happened previously to a rider in the new sprint and Grand Prix. I'm really sorry to have to mention that, Joan. Let's look at some good news, shall we? He's going to Gresini Ducati in 2027.
Yeah, well, he understood why he crashed on the Saturday. He said he didn't understand the crash on the Sunday, but perhaps on board a Ducati next year with the Gresini squad, maybe he won't have to ride with the same level of risk that he has been in the past on a Honda. We shall see. He's certainly going to have to take some risks in this session, because it's going to take absolutely everything he's got to get a Honda into qualifying 2. From what we've seen so far this weekend, the top 10 yesterday and what we saw earlier on this morning, it's going to take at the bare minimum, surely, something on a very low 1:20, and perhaps more likely something in a sort of high-ish 1:19 to get yourself out of this session.
7 riders yesterday to go through to Q2 directly were in the 1:19s. Pecco Bagnaia not being one of them. He had all kinds of issues yesterday as Moreira, as he so often does, latches onto the rear tyre of who he thinks is going to potentially drag him round to Q2. Every position on the grid important for Moreira, of course, with the incoming 3-place grid penalty. He was balking Luca Marini yesterday afternoon. Pecco Bagnaia was all at sea yesterday. 0 grip he reported on the factory Ducati GP26. There were 4 quite radical setup tweaks they made yesterday inside that Bologna garage, which did not offer him any kind of hope or any kind of speed. He was a lot more on it this morning, it's fair to say. He'll need to be in this Q1 session as Fabio Quartararo attacks hard on the brakes down the hill. Hard to believe, isn't it? The Sachsenring Grand Prix here back in 2022. The last time the 27-year-old Frenchman stood on the top step of a Grand Prix podium. The last time a Yamaha took a victory in MotoGP. He would have thought on that occasion, halfway through 22, we'd still be waiting 4 years later for another Fabio Quartararo and another Yamaha win.
And it looked like he was absolutely nailed on for the 2022 World Championship, wasn't it, when he won that particular Grand Prix, when he was 91 points ahead of Pecco Bagnaia. Of course, that turned around, and really it hasn't turned back around for Quartararo and Yamaha since. But it is a heavyweight Q1 session. Then we have the 2020, 2021 and the 2022 and 23 MotoGP World Champions battling it out, and of course only 2 can go through.
Well, Quartararo knows that there are 1:19s out there on an M1 because Jack Miller proved it yesterday. As mentioned, Jack found a superb 1:19.841. So Quartararo knows that there's a lot more from the package underneath him than the 1:20.2 he managed yesterday, which was more than a respectable lap time. It was a fast pace. It just was not anywhere near as good as Miller. First salvo then from Quartararo is a 1:20.146. We're covering the top 2, as you can see here. Mir's going quick again. He's got cracking track position here, hasn't he, Mir? And he's using it to absolute perfection. as Fabio Quartararo looks to dip into the 119s himself for the first time. He's going to have a pretty special fall set, because as you can see, he's pretty down through the first 3 splits. Yeah, Fabio, that last lap was a 1:20.375, so a couple of tenths slower than his opening attack.
Bagnaia matches near enough his 19.9 with a 20 flat, stays quickest. Moreira does climb a place up ahead of Quartararo into third on a 20.1. Quartararo, of course, we never really see him following anyone on the factory Yamaha because he's such a ferocious late breaker on that M1. And there's not really the same benefit for Quartararo to follow somebody, because he doesn't really want that rider really ahead of him who's likely to break at around the same time, if not slightly earlier than he does, which is why we always see Quartararo out there all on his own. So we've got 2 riders on a 19.9, Bagnaia and Mir, 3 more on a 20.1, Moreira, Quartararo and Marini in 5th.
7th time this year Mir's featured in Q1. He's going to be hoping it'll be a 7th time appearance this year in Q2 as well. Those two, Bagnaia and Mir, have got a pretty decent buffer back to the rider we're looking at on screens right now, Moreira, as they power up now through turns 9, now through the left hand of turn 10, 4th gear through here, about 150 kilometres an hour. Just pause there to listen to Pecco Bagnaia's Factory Ducati scream down the hill through turn 11. A 119.954 has got Pecco on top of the pile. He pits, so too does Moreira. So Moreira was rapid, he was fast, he found his best time of the weekend so far, tailing Bagnaia, but it's not enough at the moment to get him into Q2.
Haven't seen anything substantial yet from Alex Rins, who, we remind you, if you're just joining us, crashed last time he was out there on the racetrack, or certainly in the last session in free practice too. Rins has done a 25.5, which is clearly way slower than he can go, so he's at the bottom of the standings for that reason. Cal Crutchlow, he's put in a 1:21.236, just up ahead of him, which is just a tenth off of what he did in practice yesterday, when for one brief moment he was actually in the top 10.
Yeah, he was rolling back the ears, wasn't he, yesterday at times? Cal Crutchlow, you love to see it. It was great to see as Diogo Moreira tries to keep tabs, which is not an easy task around the Sachsenring. Pecco Bagnaia, he's had podiums in the last 3, a couple of sprint podiums here as well. He knows his way to Parc Ferme here. That does the 29-year-old Italian. Davide Tardozzi watches on. Whatever magic dust they sprinkled on Pecco Bagnaia's Factory Ducati overnight seems to have worked a treat, because, as we said yesterday, he was not at the races at all. Way down in 13th place, although he just left the pits there a little bit quicker than what his mechanic was expecting. Had a little quick hop out of the way as Pecco then gets himself set for time attack 2 here at the Sachsenring, and guess what? Who's right on his rear tyre? It is the number 11 of Diogo Moreira.
Yeah, that hasty getaway was to try and get out of the pit lane while Diogo Moreira wasn't looking. It did not work. He has to get up a lot earlier in the morning to shake off Diogo Moreira. Although I guess Moreira feels that he's got to follow someone that needs a lap, and Bagnaia clearly won't feel safe on a 1:19.9. There are certainly at least 3 riders who will feel they can jump into the 1:19s if they can make a small improvement, including that man Fabio Quartararo. Brad Binder here, he's currently 6th. He's found a 1:20.3. The KTMs at the moment in this session, Binder, Bastianini, Viñales are 6th, 7th and 9th.
So we're just picking up, that's going through the 3rd gear, turn 8, Bagnaia and Moreira. Alex Rins has got himself along for the ride as well. He's got a ticket to the party too. As Razgat Lioglu ventures out of pit lane, mid-120s, the best we've seen from the Turk so far. That's got him into 8th place. He's a couple of tenths behind Enea Bastianini, kicking himself, only the beast. I mean, he missed out yesterday on the direct spot in Q2 by not even 0.02 of a second. Certainly his cause not helped by a late crash at turn 8. But the fine margin, just missing out on Q2 at the moment. He could be as deep as 17th on the grid for this afternoon's sprint. 5 laps then, plenty of wear already on that hard front tyre for Bagnaia. As we track him now, he'll flick it left. First of the 10 left-handers around this Sachsenring circuit. Down through turn 2 we go. Spectacular undulation as he cranks it on the right-hand side through turn 3. Got to be careful there. There's a new bump appeared on the exit of 3, which caught out both Marc Marquez and Frankie Morbidelli yesterday.
And you are now going left, 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 all the way around to turn 10 with a drop downhill as we now go through the fast turn 7. It sort of levels out a little bit before you start climbing once again. Up once out of turn 8 and up towards turn 9 once again.
Moreira, a brand new soft rear tyre. We saw this will be the 6th lap that Bagnaia got on that front. Does have a tendency when you've got fresh rubber in the rear to push a worn front. Over the line we go then. Moreira, well, he does find his best time of the session. Close to the 119s, but not close enough. He stays in 3rd place. Bagnaia did indeed, though, pick up his pace. A 119.753. This has been a bit of a cruise so far for Bagnaia. He's almost a quarter of a second clear of Joan Mir in 2nd.
It feels pretty safe with that, has to be said. That 119.7, maybe one rider might with a Banzai lap beat it, but I'd be surprised if True beat it. Bagnaia at the moment the only one threatening to beat it as Mir fails to improve on his 119.9, so he stays in a slightly precarious 2nd.
Yeah, that 19.753 from Bagnaia would have put him 5th quickest yesterday. He's come to the party 24 hours too late as Quartararo. Good lap this by Quartararo. He's close to that top 2 already. He might be pushing himself into that top 2. Out of the final corner goes Quartararo. Brilliant once again by the Frenchman. He knew he was going to have to find a 119 to have any chance of being a Q2, and he has, as he so often does, has delivered when it really mattered. A 19.864 then from Quartararo. That has poked Mir then down to 3rd place.
So the 3 MotoGP World Champions in this session are now 1st, 2nd and 3rd. And Bagnaia, but just to put an exclamation point on it, potentially, no, it's a 19.8 for Bagnaia, no improvement. That from Quartararo matches the 119.8 that we saw from Jack Miller yesterday.
Look at this from Mir though. Mir on the charge. Oh, he lost it all in the 3rd sector. Said yesterday that Honda not really turning as well as he'd hoped. And all you need is turning here in the Sachsenring. So much of this, 79, 82nd lap you spent at lean angle, cranked over at max lean. Over the line we go then. Mir's running out of time here. 3.5 minutes of the session remaining as HRC Tech Director Romano Aldosiano looks on. Mir's going to have to find something pretty special here late on in this session because he's well over a 10th adrift of Quartararo in that 2nd place.
There's a 119.9, his ceiling in this session. Marini's looking to make a late dart as well to get himself into the top 10, and he is just about within range. If he can hold that gap to Paco Bagnaia, he would sneak ahead of Fabio Quartararo, because Luca Marini has been quite a frequent Q1 participant, but only on one previous occasion when he's been in Q1 has he got through. Is he now about to make it too as he climbs out of the Queckenberg corner and he matches Mir? He gets to within 200ths of Mir. It's a 120 flat. He stays in 4th.
Binder, 6th place. That's the best time of the session from the South African. He's improved to 120.184. As it stands at the moment, it's looking like Pedro Acosta will be going it alone for KTM in Q2. Sideways over the crest goes Bastianini. He might look pretty cool, he might look spectacular from our point of view, but it's not the fastest way around the Sachsenring for the Beast, who's been stuck in those low 120s. At the moment, is going to be staring down the barrel of a 17th place on the grid. Brilliant by Marini once again. He's been superb in that 2nd sector. Is he about to deliver a bit of a late knockout blow here on Fabio Quartararo? Fabio Quartararo's taken Luca Marini's factory Honda seat in 2027. He drops down then through turn 11. Look at this by Marini. Oh, he's been brilliant as well in the 3rd sector. If this is all clean, if this is all neat, then through these final 2 turns, 1 left-hander remaining for Marini, and this could be him advancing into Q2. Are we going to get 2 Italians then in the top 2 places? On the gas he goes, over the crest. Once again, he loses it all in that final sector. It's another PB lap from Marini, a 119.988. But unfortunately, Fabio Quartararo can breathe a big sigh of relief because his 119.8 still good enough for Q2.
Yeah, Quartararo, who in a bit of a lapse of concentration at the start of the very session, almost put his crash head on with his sunglasses still on his head. That was the only thing that went wrong for Fabio in that Q1 session. And Honda will be spitting mad, won't they, with that. Mir, Marini and Moreira all within a tenth of each other. 2 on a 19.9, Moreira on a 20.0. Third, fourth and fifth for them. Bastianini will be even more cross with that as he comes up across Diogo Moreira, who's already got 3 places to add on to his grid position of 15th, which will go to 18th. And if Enea Bastianini gets his way, he might get more added on.
Yeah, I think the stewards will probably have a look at it. Simon Kreifar bang on the money as always as the boss looks on. Gunther Steiner and the time sheets, the time screens inside that Tech 3 garage, they don't make for particularly pleasant reading, do they, for Gunther, because Bastianini is 7th, Maverick Vinales 10th. The Top Gun is firing blanks at the moment. He's having a miserable time really, both on and off the bike at the moment, with major uncertainty about his future in MotoGP. Looks like Luca Marini is going to just come up short, just over, what, a tenth behind Fabio Quartararo. We saw he had great pace in sectors 2 and 3. Those last couple of corners is where Marini is over for the beast as well. A shake of the head in frustration for Bastianini. So he is going to be 17th on the grid for this afternoon sprint. He will get bumped up a spot with the incoming Moreira penalty, because Diogo Moreira, despite his chasing of Pecco Bagnaia, looks like he's going to end that session in 5th. 15th to 18th he'll drop on the grid for tomorrow's Grand Prix over 30 laps.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Honda won't go any quicker, with both Mir, Marini and Moreira, the 3 M's, all within a tenth of a second of each other. But we know he's capable of something quite heroic on a single qualifying lap. I don't think that'll quite go in the top shelf of Quartararo Classics in a qualifying session, but it did still take something impressive for him to ensure that there are 2 Yamahas in the 12 that will compete in the upcoming Q2 session.
And the 5th time in 11 Grand Prix this year, Fabio's got himself into Q2, so not a bad effort at all. Shuddering and shaking of Joan Mir's factory Honda there as he came up pit lane. I mean, of course, he's got the pit lane speed limiter on, because that's mandatory when you head into pit lane.
He's running dry a gas, has he, on his way back into pit lane. Squeezed every last drop out of it, but it wasn't enough in the end. By a tenth of a second, Mir misses out. So
he'll be 13th on the grid. Might potentially move up a spot with Frankie Morbidelli potentially. Well, we know he's got a 3-place grid penalty incoming, so Joan Mir for tomorrow's Grand Prix might find himself up as high as 12th on the 4th row. That's the Sachsenring complex then. This is the 28th Grand Prix to take part here in this part of this corner of Eastern Germany. Job done, and a job well done. That for Bagnaia is 119.753. Never really came under any serious threat, did he? The former double MotoGP world champion. Close but no cigar for the factory Hondas. Just missing out were both Mir and Marini. They both found a pair of 119.9s, but fine margins, short gaps around a short Sachsenring layout, and both Mir and Marini, their Saturday mornings have been completed.
Yeah, Marini said after yesterday that he needed to find better turning in the second sector. Clearly found it. As we saw, he was one of the fastest of all through that second sector, but it was crucially sector 4 where Marini missed that vital couple of tenths it was in the end that he lost in that 4th sector. And that was the difference between Q2 for the Italian and 14th, potentially 13th, depending on where Frankie Morbidelli ends up in the Q2 session on the grid.
So Bagnaia and Quartararo, the 2 that are through into Q2. Great shot there, you could just see the compression on the front forks as Pecco grabbed a handful of brake at the bottom of the hill, going from 5th gear, about 300 kilometres an hour you are. Fastest point on that plunge down out of the Ralph Bollmann curve. Then you back a couple of gears, scrubbing off almost 200 kilometres an hour for that turn 12, the Saxon curve. Coming up next, though, we're going to be finding out who'll be on pole position in Chapter 11. And still in the game are Bagnaia and Quartararo.
Yeah, two of our MotoGP World Champions in that session moved through. Bagnaia and Quartararo, the third of them, finished in third. The 2020 champ, Joan Mir. Luca Marini fourth ahead of Diogo Moreira, all within a tenth of a second on their respective Hondas. Brad Binder, the first of the KTMs in that session, but only sixth ahead of Bastianini. Toprak out qualifying Alex Rins in their Yamaha battle for 8th and 9th. Maverick Vinales behind them in 10th. And Cal Crutchlow getting himself into the 120s this morning, but that wasn't enough for better than 11th.
So it was perfect Pecco in Q1 this morning. The factory Ducati rider still in the fight for pole position here in the Grand Prix of Germany. The big question going into Q2 though, can anybody topple Marc Marquez as he hunts down yet another pole position here at his beloved Sachsenring? Don't go anywhere, because coming up next live it's going to be a dramatic Q2 here in the Grand Prix of Germany. It's the Sachsenring in the sunshine. Welcome to Sprint Saturday in Chapter 11 of the 2026 MotoGP World Championship. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in this corner of eastern Germany. We are set fair for nigh on perfect conditions for the upcoming Q2 session, with the sprint over 15 laps to follow at 3 p.m. local time this afternoon. And then it is Grand Prix race day once again. Just before we have a little bit of a pause in the championship, after a pretty hectic recent run which has taken us to some of our most iconic, some of our most classic Grand Prix venues: Jerez, Le Mans, Catalonia, Mugello, Brno, most recently Assen, of course, the Cathedral of Speed in the Netherlands. And add another classic venue to our schedule right here in the Sachsenring. They are motorsport mad in this part of the world. First Grand Prix in Germany took place all the way back in 1952 in front of a crowd of over 400,000 fans. We're expecting close to a full house here this weekend, as Germany's passionate and very knowledgeable fans are about to get set to witness Marc Marquez, Ralph Fernandez, Fabio Di Giannantonio, Alex Marquez, Jack Miller, Ayagura, Marco Bezzecchi, Jorge Martin, Pedro Acosta, Frankie Morbidelli, Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Quartararo. Those two just coming out of Q1. Those German fans ready to see which one of those dozen, which one of those 12 will be on our pole position number 11 in 2026. Pole position here 1 year ago proved pivotal for Marc Marquez as he went on to complete victory in a wet sprint. The only lap he led in the sprint here last year was the most important one, the last one of them all, when he passed Marco Bezzecchi late on. And Marc completed his 9th MotoGP victory here in the main Sunday Grand Prix. Another maximum 37-point haul here this weekend from the 33-year-old Spaniard. Well, he is already firmly in the hunt for world title glory. It's going to drag him right back into contention heading into the summer break. 2 pole positions so far this season for the factory Ducati rider, on pole in front of his home crowd in Jerez. Of course, on our last visit to an anti-clockwise circuit, he was on pole at Balaton Park in Hungary, and he went on to complete yet another dream double.
Yeah, we can say with certainty it'll take much more than a 1:27.8 that he set last year to take pole position. That was in wet conditions. Absolutely beautiful dry conditions this time as Marc Marquez goes in pursuit of, well, back-to-back Sachsenring poles as he chases a 10th Sachsenring victory tomorrow afternoon. The first step on his road to that will be this Q2 session, and after what we saw in qualifying 1, Pecco Bagnaia has ensured that the factory Ducati team have full representation in this Q2 session.
Well, that fan cancelled all my plans to meet Marc here at the Grand Prix of Germany. Well, whatever plans you had, I hope you are going to get your wish, and you are going to bump into the 7 times MotoGP world champion. Closest competition behind Marc in practice yesterday was Ralph Fernandez, fresh off the back of his superb double podium in Assen. He's going to be a big podium threat again here this weekend, isn't he? The Spanish rider Fabio Di Giannantonio, almost a permanent fixture on Fridays inside the top 3, isn't he? He was 3rd quickest yesterday. Of course, he still remains the top Ducati rider in the World Championship classification. Alex Marquez was 4th fastest. Alex looking in great form so far on Sprint Saturday. He was top dog in FP2 this morning and still searching for that sweet spot on the factory Aprilia. Not just here in the Sachsenring, which has been the case for Martin, but pretty much throughout the whole of 2026. It's quite remarkable, really. It just shows how many plot twists there have been so far this year, where still hasn't really feel like he's getting the best out of that Aprilia underneath him right now, Jorge Martin. Yet after 10 Grand Prix, he's the leader of the World Championship by 7 points over his teammate Marco Bezzecchi.
Free practice 2 earlier on, didn't exactly give huge signs of Jorge Martin rocketing up the order in this qualifying session after what he admitted was a pretty tough Friday for him. He was 8th yesterday, 9th in free practice 2 earlier on this morning, a session that was topped by Alex Marquez. But without question, it is the elder Marquez who starts this Q2 session as the red-hot favourite for Sachsenring pole.
Here we go then, folks. It's our last qualifying session before the summer break. Who was going to have the honour, have the accolade of pole here in Germany. Getting a nice new shiny Tissot watch to boot as well. These are nigh on perfect conditions to go racing. Shows how much the Sachsenring has transformed since we first came here in 1998, where all those trucks are parked. That was where the media centre was back on our first visit here in 98, inside what was a very large marquee. Now, of course, so many permanent fixtures around this tight and twisty layout, the shortest track on the Grand Prix calendar. Let's hope we're not short of drama in this Q2 session, and the 15-lap sprint coming up later on this afternoon. Ducati have taken the last 5 pole positions here. They've so far undefeated in our 3 sprints that have taken place here in Germany. Happy to let everybody else get on with business, get on with work. In the early part of this Q2 session is our Assen winner, Ayagura. 25 points he scored in that Grand Prix of the Netherlands on Sunday. 25 points he sits behind Martin at the top of the World Championship without any shadow of a doubt. The 25-year-old Japanese rising star is a title contender this year.
Someone told you've got to get to work, you've got a qualifying session to fight for and a front row to fight for. He is looking for a 3rd consecutive front row. Is Ayagura after pole back in Brno, 2nd last weekend. His expectations not particularly high, but this is Ayagura. We're talking about a special young talent.
It would be some story if Ayagura did leave the Sachsenring Grand Prix leading the World Championship, because a Japanese rider has not led MotoGP in 51 long years. Since Hideo Kanaya led the standings back in 1975, after which Grand Prix? The German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. Can Ayagura pull off a big shot to lead the standings going into the summer break? Here is then Marc Marquez. So often when we've seen him in Q2 sessions here in the Sachsenring, there has been a kind of air of inevitability to expect him to deliver more success.
He's a roundabout on target for what he did yesterday. 3.94, the best that time Marc Marquez did yesterday. He's going to match it or maybe a fraction behind it. Let's get him over the line. It's a 19.5 for the reigning world champion. Fastest lap of the day so far, but it's going to take faster than that to take pole position.
At 19.394 was Marc's best pace yesterday on Friday afternoon. That is the best time of the weekend so far. Still the all-time lap record holder here in the Sachsenring is the Gian Antonio, who's put himself in prime position for pole position. Already a couple of poles so far this year for Digia on our South and North America swing in Brazil and in Austin earlier on this season. Of course, for his 5th front row start of the campaign. Marco Bezzecchi straight away into the night. Oh, no! Well, that is the last thing that he needed. That's another nightmare for poor old Marco Bezzecchi, who is having the toughest period of his Grand Prix career right now. We were just saying that he'd gone up into 3rd place, provisional front row, and he has another big high side. 4th gear, downhill through turn 7. Multiple barrel rolls once again for Marco Bezzecchi. Your heart goes out to the Italian at the moment. Battered, beaten, bruised after his 200km/h crash on lap 2 of the Grand Prix of the Netherlands in Assen, 13 days ago now, and it's another monster crash for Bezzecchi.
1:19.2 for Raul Fernandez. That is now the fastest lap time of the weekend. So some good news at least for Aprilia. No crash this weekend would have been good news for Marco Bezzecchi, but certainly not there. He is just now getting up onto his knees. Surely that's his qualifying session over at the very least, and that will surely put some big questions as to whether Bezzecchi continues in the weekend.
Oh, God, look at that. It was sliding, and then it gripped. He'd have almost known what was coming there. He'd have had his heart in his mouth. Let's have a listen to this one, because this is scary. Fourth gear, motoring at about 170 kilometres an hour. I mean, that's just a horrible sight, a sight we didn't want to see. The good news is Marco Bezzecchi was clearly conscious throughout. He just needed time to just try and catch his breath, try and compose himself. I mean, he said yesterday there's not really a millimetre of his body that's not suffering with some kind of pain. Back in the session, those riders that are still upright and attacking for pole position, Raul Fernandez, 1:19.262, cracking that by the number 25. He's exactly a quarter of Fabio Di Giannantonio.
Clearly the yellow flags hadn't come out yet for Raul Fernandez when he came past Bezzecchi, because he was behind him on the racetrack when he did that 1:19.2. Here's Alex Marquez, who clearly did catch the yellows because he has not set a lap time so far. We've got Alex Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, who of course came through Q1, yet to register a lap time. Alex Marquez is about to, and it's likely to put him on the front row of the grid.
Raul Fernandez has never had a pole position in MotoGP, has he? You've got to go all the way back to the Algarve Grand Prix in Portimao back in 2021. 5 years ago, the last time Raul Fernandez topped a Q2 session. It has been coming. He led FP1 yesterday morning for the first time in his MotoGP career, and he's just in that purple patch right now, isn't he? Brimming with confidence, Raul Fernandez, as Alex Marquez looked a little bit frustrated there as he ran in hot into the first corner. So to 8th would be the damage for Frankie. Agura on the charge once again. This could be tight. Agura, if he carries this lap through, will be on the front row.
Yeah, so with Bezzecchi relegated to 6th, he would still, as it stands, start 5th for tomorrow's Grand Prix. That penalty of Morbidelli does not take effect in the sprint later on, so if he does qualify 5th, he would start the sprint from there. What kind of third sector has Agura had? It's not bad at all, is it? So close up in amongst that top 3 or 4, but as it stands, Agura is going to be on the cusp of the front row.
Well, Superfile Trackhouse at the moment are living super times, aren't they? Only the second team in history to go through a weekend with a sprint 1-2 and a Grand Prix 1-2 last time out in Aston Agura. That's brilliant. Both the Trackhouse Aprilias that are on the front row of the grid. Marc Marquez back down into 4th place on that second row with Brother Alex and Morbidelli. Haven't seen much from Marc as a sort of pole threat so far, but you know that threat's incoming. We're tracking now through turn 3. And now it's just left. A little bit like my golf game, if we're being honest now, as Marc Marquez, he's already nailed that first split.
He's not the only one. Fabio Quartararo, amazingly, has also set the fastest first sector. Raul Fernandez is also improving it himself. Personal best in the first sector for him as he chases Di Giannantonio. But Marc Marquez through the second sector, continuing to find time. Is he about to snatch away not only pole position, but a lap record?
Well, he's had 76 MotoGP poles in the past. A whole chunk of them have come right here in the Sachsenring. He wants another one, doesn't he? He wants to make sure that he's got clear tarmac ahead of him on that run down, the short run down to a very, very tight and tricky first corner here in the Sachsenring. We've seen so much drama there unfold, haven't we, down the years? This is a straight shootout, it looks like, between Marc Marquez and Raul Fernandez, potentially to be bumping Di Giannantonio out of pole. Over the line we go, of course. Marc Marquez, he's now back as the fastest rider in history around the Sachsenring. He's done it once again. He finds something super special here at the Grand Prix of Germany, a 1:19.041. Has that secured Marc Marquez his 77th MotoGP pole position? It's certainly, for the time being, secured him the accolade of being the fastest rider in history here at the Sachsenring.
Alex Marquez joins him now on the front row of the grid. What a lap that is from the younger Marquez. He takes 2nd on a 19.1. Fernandez also found in 19.1, but that's only good enough for 4th. Quartararo also in the midst of all of that has gone on to the 2nd row on the factory Yamaha with a 19.383. He takes 6th place. That's bumped Bezzecchi and Martin now down to 8th and 9th.
And anything the Aprilias can do, Ducati saying, well, we can do better. It was, what, about a minute ago that 2 Aprilias were on the front row of the grid with Fernandez and Negura, and now we are facing potentially an all Ducati lockout of the front row of the grid. Pedro Acosta, the lone warrior for KTM in this session, he's down in 10th place. He's doing very respectable sort of mid to high 119s as Acosta, but at the moment 4th row of the grid.
Bagnaia in the pits, so he won't improve on P11, so he got himself out of qualifying 1, but didn't get himself very far from there. Pedro Acosta 1 place ahead of him in 10th place, potentially looking to lift himself off the 4th row of the grid. Martin signalling there with his right foot that he's getting out of the way, and Acosta is very keen for him to get out of the way.
Look at 2 front row starts so far this year for Jorge Martin, the World Championship leader. Doesn't look like he's going to be anywhere near the front row in this session. So Pedro Acosta, yeah, superb in the first sector, but he's been suffering with a bit of a lack of turning, a lack of front confidence on that KTM so far this weekend. So if you base your judgment on the first sector, you'd be thinking, well, he's got a real crack at the front row here, Acosta, but he's going to be nowhere near it, is he? Could be a PB lap time. This could be at least moving up onto the 3rd row of the grid. Could be 9th here for Acosta. We'll track him then up the hill out of turn 13 he goes, drops the rear ride height device. Look how low that KTM squats over the line. No improvement. So Acosta then, he has got this lap if he needs it. Well, it looks like he's backed out of it though, doesn't it? So Acosta at best will be 10th.
And Jorge Martin will be 9th. He pulls into the pits with 5 seconds remaining, so a bit of a miserable qualifying session that for the Factory Aprilia team. They will each move up a place on the grid tomorrow, with Morbidelli's 3-place grid penalty. That'll shunt him back to 10th. So the 3rd row tomorrow will be Bezzecchi, Martin and Pedro Acosta, but the Factory Aprilia team, Martin still showing no signs of improvements. The World Championship leader this weekend, 9th. Still out-qualified by Bezzecchi with that 1 lap prior to the turn 7 high side.
7th time in 11 Grand Prix this year. Martin's going to be 3rd row or lower. Of course, that was his real key weapon, wasn't it? When he was a Ducati rider, he was always able to deliver that explosive 1 lap when he really needed it. Record pole sitter in Moto3, a whole bunch of Moto2 poles as well. Plenty in his MotoGP career as well. His last time out in Assen was his 21st. But once again, did anybody really doubt it? Did anybody think that Marquez was not going to take back-to-back pole positions here at the Sachsenring? He does so with a new all-time lap record. A great morning for the Marquez brothers, with Alex slotting himself in the 2nd. It is an all Ducati front row. It is a 6th consecutive pole position here for the Bologna factory, as they go in search of protecting their undefeated sprint record here at the Sachsenring. They have locked out the last 3 Grand Prix podiums here as well. Bit of a statement session that from the Ducatis, because it looked like at one point Ralph Fernandez and Ayagura were going to pose big threats for the front row. Well, it wasn't easy, it never is in MotoGP. It wasn't without its moments, without its scares, but when all said and done, it is pole position number 77 in MotoGP for Marc Marquez, pole position number 105 in his Grand Prix career.
Yeah, using all the tools at his disposal, the 2-stop strategy, using both bikes, using plenty of tyres, and he got the job done. Marc Marquez on pole position at the Sachsenring, isn't he always? His crew chief, Marco Rigamonti, speaking live to Jack.
Yeah, brilliant job from Marc Marquez, but tactically brilliant as well. The 2-stop strategy, Marco. Whose idea was that, and how brilliantly did he execute it?
Yeah, because here the lap time is so slow that we can manage three-time attack. We had the tire to have new tire, front and rear, and so we did.
Correct.
It was good.
It was very good. Congrats.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Marco Rigamonti. The 2 previous times that Marc Marquez this year has qualified on pole position, he has gone on to win the sprint. He won the sprint from pole in Jerez. He won the sprint from pole at Balaton Park in Hungary most recently. In Hungary, of course, he did eventually go on to complete yet another treble. Pole position, sprint win and Grand Prix win. Well, that's a third of the job completed here as he looks to complete that hat-trick once again here at the Sachsenring. Yeah, just a clenched fist there to his crew chief, Marco Rigamonti, who just spoke briefly to Jack. So often he gets the tactics spot on, So often he's one step ahead of the game, both on and off the track, isn't he, Marc Marquez? Well, they were first and second in the Grand Prix here last year, weren't they? And they're first and second on the grid in 2026. Marc from Alex Marquez.
Yep, Ducati front row. Second row, it's Aprilia, Yamaha, Fernandez, Agura, and the stunning Fabio Quartararo via qualifying 1 to 6th place on the grid. Morbidelli will be 7th on the grid for the sprint, ahead of Bezzecchi and Martin. There's some hijinks and banter between the brothers, Marc and Alex, who start together on the front row of the grid. But without question, Ducati, and in particular the reigning champion Marc Marquez, cranking up the heat still further on Aprilia this morning.
And the third time this year, Quartararo is going to be starting on the second row of the grid. First time since he was 6th in front of his home crowd in Le Mans. Fabio Di Gianantonio then on the front row of the grid, but no longer with the proud distinction of being the fastest rider ever around the Sachsenring. That's title taken away from him